My father was a tireless advocate for the law. He was a criminal prosecutor. Some say ruthless, others say righteous. Yeah, I'm cut from the same cloth. I can't really remember who I was before I became a cop. It's my job to make bad things happen to bad people.
She did not want to go to work that night. He did not walk the streets at night. We all knew as soon as Jackie didn't come home that something was wrong. The overpass was Jackie's last walk. Jackie deserves that someone be held accountable for this. Every time I come here, I recall Jackie's last walk. My mother was devastated. All that she wanted to do was look for Jackie's killer. We would follow any tips. We kept hoping and looking. Someone decided to end Jackie's life and take her away from us.
How has it been for you, this experience, losing Jackie?
I've lost other people in my life from illnesses, old age, and you can intellectually process it while you're grieving. In Jackie's case, you can't. The grieving has been done, but there are no answers.
Having something hanging for so many years and not knowing the answer, I would think it wears you down a bit because you've lost something so precious so early.
I don't know if there's such a thing as closure, but I know for me that I would rather know who's responsible than live all my life not trying to find answers. When I met with police last year, I had 3 requests, one of them being if Jackie's diary could be returned to us. That's the only thing I have, and I'm willing to offer it if that would help.
It will help. We will take that. Thank you. The exhibit tag shows 1969, October 4th, at 15 minutes after 10 o'clock p.m. That may have been the last time it was looked at. Having the diary in my hand as an artifact of Jackie's short life hammers home the importance of what we're doing here. With your blessing, we would like to bring this case back into the light.
I believe it is solvable.
Being from London, I always knew about this case. Everyone here has a personal connection to this case and should be angered that it's still open. I've been a cop and a professor of criminology for years, and have used that experience to assemble a squad of civilian subject matter experts. They must approach each case completely unbiased, to not box themselves into conventional thinking, to bring fresh eyes and new technologies to the table. Their job, and mine, is to investigate the coldest of cold cases, the murders that time forgot. Jacqueline English, case number 69-52, the 52nd murder in the province in 1969. October 4th, 1969, approximately 5 p.m. Jacqueline, or Jackie as she was known, attends her place of work here. The Metropolitan store located in the Treasure Island Plaza was then a rural area outside the city of London. Jackie was a waitress at the Metropolitan store. 10:15 p.m., Jackie is seen leaving the store, walking over the overpass on Wellington Road. 2 witnesses describe Jackie as getting into a 4-door sedan. That's the last time Jackie is seen alive. 4 days later, the nude body of Jackie English is discovered floating in the water of the Big Otter Creek near the town of Tilsonburg, almost an hour outside the city of London. No clothing on the body, even her earrings had been removed. It's determined that Jackie died from a single severe blow to the head.
Young girls like Jacqueline, to have her life cut short in such a violent and atrocious manner, it's horrifying.
I have a 14-year-old daughter. Just disturbing as a parent. It's evil.
The fact that it was so long ago and it hasn't been resolved, and the fact that only Anne is left, a sister, the length of the not knowing, it's tragic.
A number of Jackie's belongings, including torn pieces of her clothing, are found approximately 10 miles from where the body was dumped. A pair of brown penny loafers she was seen wearing as she was walking home were found 10 miles from where the other clothing was discarded. A witness comes forward, a woman named Betty Harrison. She tells the police she saw Jackie speaking with a customer inside the Metropolitan store, a man she describes as having made Jackie look uneasy. She provides police with a description that allows them to create this composite drawing. Ms. Harrison begins to receive threatening phone calls, telling her she should not have gone to the police. In subsequent days, she receives a sympathy card in the mail. The only inscription on the card is the statement, "We will be watching you."
It also indicates to me that the perpetrator, they're very connected to the media. There seems to be almost an aspect of performance.
Absolutely. About a month later, Ms. Harrison is ambushed by a man with a knife and confined in her car while he cuts her face upwards of 27 times.
The attack on Mrs. Harrison seems very theatrical. If her attacker was legitimately concerned with being connected to Jackie's murder, why wouldn't he just kill her? Was Ms. Harrison able to describe her attacker, and did it match the composite?
Not very well. It was dark, and given the brutality of the attack, she didn't get a good look.
This Miss Harrison is still alive and willing to talk to us.
She's dead.
She's dead. It would have been very helpful to be able to speak to somebody who saw something at the time.
So far, the squad is asking all the right questions. They're looking for a way into this case, and that's exactly what I want to see from them. Other questions that connect to the evidence.
Was Jackie sexually assaulted?
No obvious sign of sexual assault other than her body being stripped nude, her clothes being found torn.
No defensive wounds?
No defensive wounds. Her boyfriend at the time voluntarily provided a blood sample for comparison to the DNA at the scene because it was thought that the sample may have been from when they had consensual sex earlier on the 4th.
What was the boyfriend doing on the night of the 4th?
In the notes that I've received, and I'll share with you, there's a detailed statement taken from the boyfriend. He has an alibi.
Okay.
It's just weird that there wasn't necessarily a lot of trauma to her body, but the person who was threatened afterwards with the knife, there was substantial violence.
So is it the same person? Is it a copycat? We know that there's a number of unsolved sex slayings in London at the time.
Mike and I met with the sister who had mentioned that this person named Marilyn Hurd, a friend of Jackie's. After Jackie died, Marilyn tried to commit suicide. Marilyn had a picture of Jackie, and on the back of this picture it said, "The name of the killer will remain with me."
Antonella's revelation raises a lot of questions for me about Marilyn, who she is, and what else she knows about the circumstances about Jackie's death.
It could be huge. It could break the case if we can get her to come clean and talk to us.
What do you want to do with this?
I'd like to go to where the body was dumped. I think it'd be useful to map all of the different locations, because if we have the point where she was abducted, where the body and other clothing was dumped, it might give us a useful radius to start plotting persons of interest.
I like where you're going with that. Geographic profiling is key in this case. Peter?
I'd like to get a look at as much archival data as possible and map it.
Maybe pair up with someone who then can look at similar cases.
Mike, you mentioned that there's a lot of sex slayings in London, so I'd be interested in looking into those cases, public forums, that kind of thing.
Antonella?
I want to look at the diary, first of all. I want to see what's in the diary. I want to see what she thought, what she did.
Monty?
Marilyn, you'd have to go and try and talk to Marilyn.
Find her. There's still an element of danger to this case. Be mindful of who we're dealing with here. Stay vigilant. All right, let's go. Jackie's murder is a very complicated case, and it will push this squad to its limits. Not only do we have to unearth old facts, we need to uncover new information.
40 years is a long time for a case to be cold. I don't know whether or not Marilyn Hurd is alive, but somebody has to remember her.
Jackie English was last seen alive on the night of October 4th, 1969, when she was on her way home from work. Her body was discovered in a creek days later, over 40 miles from where she was last seen. Her clothes and shoes were then found miles from where her body was located. I need Antonella to look at our victim. I need her to help us understand who Jackie was. Why is it that she got in the car that night? Who was driving? Was it someone she knew, someone from her inner circle, a friend and acquaintance? Or someone from an outer perimeter, someone who had seen her before, and when they saw her walking that overpass, saw an opportunity and took it.
I came in this evening to really focus on reading Jackie's diary. I'm interested to see what Jackie was thinking at the time, what was going on in her life. There are thoughts, there are reflections that she's experiencing. I want to get to that. As a psychotherapist, you have to read more than what's actually there. After reading the diary several times, I noticed that there could be some code embedded in the text. Cracking this code might be key in helping us in this investigation.
I've just got a call about some files and some personal diaries that belong to a detective who worked this case in the late 60s. I'm hoping that there's something buried in those files that will light a fire under this case. Dennis?
Oh, Mike,
Nice to meet you.
I found some interesting information. My father passed away, and he was a detective sergeant in this area. They spent a lot of time on this Jackie English case. And there's the diaries. I also found in his basement some files. And you see these diaries. They tell what he did, who he met. Jackie English bothered him all his life because it never did come to resolution.
This is a great gift. This is really remarkable. I've never seen anything like this. This original detective was so focused, so haunted by this case, that he duplicated all of his notes and then made secondary copies of some of his key files, boxed them up, and he kept them as a time capsule in his house. One day he hoped that someone could carry on his work, that new technology would provide new momentum for his hunches that he could never follow up on, and that no one would listen to him about. I just found something interesting in the notes from the original investigation. It turns out that Jackie's coworker, Marilyn Hurd, who attempted suicide in the days after Jackie's death, changed her version of events about what happened that October night, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Hi, Ann, it's Mike. I'd like to come talk to you. I'm just following up on some new information. It's about somebody you know. One of the nagging questions in this case is the behavior of Marilyn Hurd. What is the secret, do you think, that she has?
I think Marilyn knows exactly what happened to Jackie. Marilyn has directed everybody in a million different ways, but Marilyn always was saving the ending for another day. Marilyn's mind has covered it up, or she's deliberately not sharing that with us.
Your sister's murder touched off this behavior?
Yes.
this botched suicide attempt?
I believe Marilyn holds the key, and something happened the Friday night. He's related. He was starting his career as a criminal very early on.
Do you know if he was out of jail at the time of Jackie's murder?
I have no idea if in jail or free.
We may be looking at someone who's fallen between the cracks. We need to look further into Marilyn's relatives, specifically his criminal background, if this is the person that Marilyn is protecting. The best indicator of future behavior is past behavior, so I want to know what he was up to at the time and whether or not he would have had motive and opportunity to abduct and murder Jackie.
Right now, I'm up to trying to find Marilyn Hurd, but I haven't had any luck looking for her on the computer, so I'm gonna go old school. She's not listed in any current listing, but maybe a few years ago or 10 years ago, she had an address. There's definitely some phone numbers here for me to look into. If Marilyn Hurd is alive and in London, I'll find her.
The squad is investigating the murder of Jackie English, who was murdered on her way home from her part-time job in October 1969. Suffice it to say, after 40 years, the trail is very cold. Antonella is looking through Jackie's old diary to see if there's something in there that can help the squad out.
I noticed that there could be some code embedded in the text.
In addition to that, Peter and Renee are conducting a geoprofiling experiment, looking at other cases that may be related to Jackie's.
Geographic profiling is a way of taking into account multiple crimes in a crime series, and we're applying Rosmo's formula to the case of Jackie English because we have multiple data points to work with here. Rosmo's formula is a mathematical equation designed to find the most likely residence of a serial killer based on his crimes.
Rosmo's formula is currently the gold standard in terms of geoprofiling. It helped net Canada's worst serial killer, Robert Pickton, developed by an academic police officer like me.
I started my geographic profile with only one point, Jackie English's home at the time when she was killed.
The distance between the Metropolitan Store, the highway, and London city limit remain unchanged, and those variables will all be important factors to incorporate into the geographic profile that Peter's constructing. Right now, we're at the site where Jackie's body was discovered in Big Otter Creek, and I'm interested in examining the landscape around the bridge and around the creek where she was found to see what other options the perpetrator may have had for disposing of her body. I find it hard to believe that if the body were dropped from this height into water that shallow, they wouldn't show any signs of scraping the bottom. We can't assume that she was actually dropped from the bridge. Perhaps her body was carried down the bank and placed in the creek itself, which means that there could be some added significance to this body of water.
Renee's confirmed locations where Jackie was last seen alive and where Jackie's body was found. Renee's emailed me these coordinates, and I'm going to put them into my geographic profile and start to build a more complete picture. Danya's been researching murders that have occurred in and around the area where Jackie was killed. Once I get those details, I'll be able to put it all together and see if a pattern emerges indicating where the killer might have lived.
I'm intrigued why the perpetrator would have selected the bridge itself as a location to dispose of her body. It's a very conspicuous spot. It would indicate to me that the perpetrator wants the victim to be found.
When I was reading through Jackie English's diary, I discovered that certain parts of it were written in some sort of secret code. Those are the encryptions that were in the diary. Do you think you can do anything with those? I could really use Monty and Peter's help to help me crack it.
This E's got to represent either an I or an A because those are the only two words in the English language that can be in a sentence and just be one letter.
We've got some double letters too, right? Like the double B at the beginning of the word.
What can that be? Llama?
Yeah.
Like what other word in the English language begins with a double letter? I can't think of one other than llama.
And we have is likely a substitution cipher, which means that every letter has been replaced by exactly one other letter, and that this scheme doesn't change or evolve.
If E equals I, let's say that's the case. If we go 1, 2, 3, 4.
Once we figure out what scheme Jackie used to encode this text, we can then proceed character by character.
Okay, I got it. 1, 2, B equals L. 1, 2 in. If J equals D, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You follow?
Yeah, I think you got it. Yeah, so we've got Lloyd. The name Lloyd fits that template.
When I checked into Jackie's background, I found out she had a boyfriend named David. When I checked into his background, I found out he had a brother named Rick, and Rick's middle name is Lloyd.
What's V gonna be?
R, right?
R. French. She missed a letter. Lloyd French kissed me.
Lloyd French kissed me?
Yeah. There's one down here as well. F. M was A, right?
I faked tears.
I faked tears.
That's what I got.
There's only
did.
2 instances of that encryption, which for some
Well, here's
reason
the-
she wanted to keep these 2 secret. Lloyd French kissed me? This is unsettling. French kisses and fake tears? Who is this Lloyd? And could he somehow be connected to Jackie's murder?
Contained in the original file for Jackie English is a letter dating to 1978, 9 years after she was murdered. It's written by the brother of Jackie's boyfriend at the time of her murder. In this letter, Rick is seeking Dave's forgiveness for something horrible that he's done. The writer will not mention the event. Substitution words he uses include the burden, the sin, my sin. What he's referring to, I don't know. Could the brother, Rick, have had something to do with Jackie's murder? That's the question. The squad has been pushing hard to find the person or persons responsible for the murder of Jackie English. This is a group of civilians. Detective work is not in their usual wheelhouse. That said, so far I'm impressed with what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. It's imperative that we track down Jackie's co-worker, Marilyn Hurd, and look closer at her relative. I've been digging through some old police files, and I found an interesting letter between Jackie's boyfriend at the time and his brother. The content of that letter is strange, and it may have something to do with her murder. I'm recruiting the assistance of Dr. John Olson from the UK, arguably the world expert when it comes to forensic linguistics. He's been used by detectives all over Europe in cases where they need to analyze suicide letters, ransom letters, or confessions. In this case, I want him to get to the bottom of this concealed sin that's being referred to in this letter between the 2 brothers. If you'd just like to give me your take on the letter as it was given to you.
One of the first things that I look at when I look at a document of this nature is to see whether I can somehow get a picture of the relationship between the writer and the receiver.
I've removed the date, I've removed any reference to any specific person by name or by relationship, so he's looking at a blinded document.
Upon reading this, it is clear that any relationship between the writer and the receiver of these documents goes back a very long way. But yet, there is no love lost between us. That made me think of siblings, that we are dealing with siblings.
What, in your expert opinion, is it that the writer is talking about?
I think the word sinfulness really gives us the clue. It strongly suggests to me a sexual incident. The very fact that it's never made overt, this is a very common strategy used by people when talking about incidents of which they feel some kind of shame. There is a certain crypticness about it. This may be because the writer, it's just occurred to me, was perhaps in prison at the time, but even so, there is no indication here of a third party. This seems to be very much a matter, because of the intensity of it, between the writer and the receiver.
In your experience, is this thing that the writer is referring to a cryptic admission to a murder, in your opinion?
No, absolutely not. I think this is a private shame that we're dealing with rather than a public crime.
Dr. Olson, in analyzing this letter and knowing nothing else about this case, is satisfied that it's correspondence between two siblings and that it's in reference to some sexual incident and that it's not a confession to murder. In combing through the original lead detective's personal diaries and journals, I've noted that her boyfriend at the time, David, had an alibi and was immediately excluded as a suspect. That said, his brother Rick has some significant involvement with the law. In looking at what he's done, nothing comes close to the very specific MO and signature that we see in Jackie's murder. It's time we move on and explore other possibilities.
When Mike talked to Jackie's sister Anne, he found out that
Marilyn Hurd's relative had some run-ins with the law.
So I'm checking crime sites, social media sites, and any other records to see what I can come up with. See if there's any buzz about this guy still out there.
Dania has found some compelling information about Marilyn's relative that might prove key in moving this case forward. We have uncovered a very interesting development. Of course, we all know Marilyn Hurd. This botched suicide attempt in the weeks after Jackie's murder revealed that she had a photograph of Jackie in her pocket with some sort of cryptic, ominous message that she would take the secret of the killer to her grave. And who is it that Marilyn would be so willing to protect? And it turns out that Marilyn has a relative. And in he stabbed and slashed a boy playing on a lawn. He was later arrested, charged, and convicted in this attack. He was paroled or on full release just before Jackie's murder. We need to determine whether he and Jackie ever made acquaintance. I was also able to obtain a high school class photograph. This is him here. Did he also slash Betty Harrison, the witness who provided police with that composite description? If so, is he also more directly connected to Jackie's murder? So we're going to need to tighten this up. Renee, I want you to look further into what happened. And I want you to track down an expert in facial recognition who can overlay and compare this image from to the 1969 composite drawing. These are important finds with limited time remaining. Let's get at it. The missing piece of the puzzle continues to be Marilyn Hurd. Whatever it is she knows or thinks she knows is key here, so finding her is imperative.
Residential. Gotcha. Yeah, Mike. Yeah, it's Monty. How are you? Yeah, I found Marilyn Hurd. In London. I'll email it to you right now.
Finally, this is our opportunity to find out if Marilyn Hurd really knows something. Is she protecting her relative?
I know who they are.
Who are they? The squad is looking to help solve the 1969 murder of Jackie English. She was last seen getting into a car and then vanishing into the night. We already have one suspect. She had a relative who, just prior to Jackie's murder, was convicted of a serious assault. It seems as though she may be protecting him. Tell me how you knew Jackie.
We started working together at the Metropolitan store. We had to walk over the 401 overpass to get to the closest city bus stop.
Okay. I knew that if I was aggressive in my questioning, that she would probably shut down, the same as she did with Anne English. Now, what do you remember about the night she went missing?
I wasn't with her the night she went missing, but she gave me a call sometime after 1 o'clock in the afternoon to ask me if I would go with these two men that she knew. I said I wouldn't, and I warned her about going with them. I know who they are.
Who are they?
I can't.
In the weeks after Jackie's murder, a security guard downtown found you with a photo in your pocket of Jackie.
I took an overdose myself.
But you were found with Jackie's photo in your pocket, and there was an inscription on the back stating something like,
I knew who killed Jackie English.
and you take it to your grave. Who's that?
I was a big confidant back there. I never broke a secret. If someone told me something and asked me not to tell anybody, I wouldn't tell anybody.
It's always frustrating when a witness clams up and won't fork over the information needed to help break a case open. Sometimes it's because they're genuinely afraid. Sometimes it's because they think they're being loyal to some confidant. It's important that I find another method of discovering who exactly she's protecting. Did your relative know Jackie?
Not very well.
Had they met before?
I don't know.
Did he ever come to visit you at the store? Might he
No.
have? No? 19 stabbed a small child. Let's just cut
No.
to the chase.
That stabbed a small child.
Okay.
And I went to the jail and asked him why he was taking the
rap?
The rap, and he said he didn't think would survive delinquency school.
So when got out in 1969,
okay, he got into trouble again apparently,
Right.
and armed robbery. But I knew could never do that.
so let me get this straight. He didn't stab the child. Somebody else did. And this armed robbery, he didn't do that either.
No,
But he took the rap for both.
he did.
Okay.
I've only ever told the truth as I remember it.
Do you still keep in touch with him?
No, I don't know where he's living or anything. I was too drugged up on psychiatric medication to keep tabs on him.
Over 40 years later, Marilyn Hurd is still protecting the identity of whoever it is she thinks killed Jackie English. The question is this an elaborate game she's playing, or has the trauma of Jackie's murder actually twisted her own memories to the point where she actually believes everything that she's saying and thinking? I'm also curious who they are. She keeps referring to them as they. Does this include Marilyn's relative and one or two or more other people, or different people entirely? We need to focus on cold hard facts and move this case forward, not conjecture or guesswork or what Marilyn Hurd thinks she may know.
Renee and I have been working on a geographic profile for Jackie, plotting locations where she was last seen, where her body was discovered, and where her clothing was found. Meanwhile, Danny has been looking into similar crimes with comparable signatures to combine into our geographic profile. Our hope is that by cross-referencing all locations, we are able to pinpoint where the killer most likely lived.
So I sent you guys the spreadsheet on the London sex slings. Is there anything that you guys found in terms of patterns or commonalities?
There was one case,
Right?
it occurred in 19... If you guys want to take a look at... The case bears some remarkable similarities to Jackie. So was last seen getting into a car. Her body, her clothes, and her shoes were all found scattered widely.
Wow.
And the most obvious similarity is that evidence from the case was found near the same gravel pit where Jackie's shoes were left.
The MO, the age, and circumstances.
Many
how the victim was-
commonalities between these two cases.
Yeah.
And even though it was solved, the conviction didn't occur until 1970. So the timeline also fits for Jackie's case.
Jackie was 69, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Are they still in jail? Were they free? It's kind of like an adrenaline rush, just realizing those connections.
What's this guy's name?
David.
Renee's find with respect to this David character. I mean, this is really what this initiative is about. This is what open source investigations ideally yield, which is a match between where Jackie's shoes were dumped and where David's victim was also dumped. That can't be dismissed as a coincidence. Peter, how'd you make out with Rosmo's formula in your geographic profile?
Pretty well. So let me just throw this up on the smartboard here. Rosmo's formula is a mathematical equation designed to determine where a serial killer lives. If we assume that one serial killer was responsible for Jackie's murder as well as the other murders in the same place and time that we've discovered, then Rosmo's formula allows us to pool the locations of these multiple murders and more accurately determine where the serial killer lives.
So we've got place last seen for Jacqueline English, the various locations where her clothing was found, where her body was located. We've got the location of the attack on witness Betty Harrison. We've got home address at the time. All of this seems to be surrounding this red center. Explain the significance of that.
So here, overlaid on a map of London and surrounding towns, is the most likely location of who killed Jackie English. The highest probability is marked by this red oval. And this red oval is centered on the town of Ontario.
David lived in the same town, and the formula indicates that in the Jackie English case, that town is the most likely home base for the killer. So we're going to need to tighten this up. We've still got a lot of work to do. We still need to determine if we should be looking at Marilyn's relative. It's potentially being involved in Jackie's murder. But it's also important to take a hard look at this David, find out what involvement he might have had. It's time to start nailing this case down. This civilian squad has done a fantastic job unearthing new information about the unsolved murder of Jackie English. Already at this point in our investigation, we have several persons of interest. As it turns out, Jackie's co-worker, Marilyn Hurd, had a relative who was convicted of a serious assault just prior to Jackie's murder. But it's also important to take a hard look at this David fellow, find out what he was up to, find out what involvement he might have had. Thus far, the information is pretty compelling.
And this red oval is centered on the town of Ontario.
That town is the most likely home base for the killer. It's time to start nailing this case down.
Right now, we have 2 persons of interest in this case. We also have a composite drawing of someone that a witness saw Jackie talking to the night she went missing. So I'm at Brock University to meet with a researcher who specializes in facial perception. I'm hoping to see whether the composite drawing resembles either of our persons of interest.
The problem with his face, as you can see, is that it's incredibly grainy. And so that makes it quite difficult to find some of the edges.
This is a picture of David.
David's image is quite good. He's looking straight ahead.
So can you perhaps explain to me how you're going to compare these images to each other?
I'll try to identify ways in which this composite is distinctive by comparing them to an average face. This is the Caucasian average. So we'll find out how it differs. Then what we'll do is we'll do some measurements on David's face and on face and see whether they differ in the same way or the opposite way. Now, if we look at he only shares distinctive features in 2 ways. What's really interesting about his face is his forehead is particularly large. It's so much larger than average that I would consider that to be a fairly important difference. You can see that David does have a small forehead, and if we go from the brow to the middle of the lips, it's also larger. So in other words, just like the composite, the middle of his face seems to be relatively large. He seems to have a smallish chin. Where I have little green check marks, that indicates that he differs from the average face in the same way as that composite drawing. David has 4 green check marks compared to having only 2, which means David is more similar to the composite. It's not a positive ID, but it's saying it could be.
We just have to be careful to what extent we take these results, because the sketch was not necessarily Jackie's murderer.
I've worked a lot of weird cases in my day. Jackie English's case is probably the most twisted I've ever encountered personally. So who are we left with? Renee, I'm going to go to you first.
Well, I went to Brock University to meet with Dr. Kathy Mondlock. She was able to establish that the sketch could be of David, and it is less likely to be that of our other person of interest, but it doesn't mean that David is the person who was the basis for the sketch.
Peter, I'm going to come to you with respect to the forensic geographic profile.
And reran it to see, without any prior assumptions of who killed Jackie, what does the geographic profile algorithm tell us? And sure enough, like before, lights right up. And the geographic profile prioritizes David over all our persons of interest.
Along with Peter's geographic profile, we know from news reports from that period that this David character was convicted of dumping his victim's body just north of his hometown. 3 years later, Jackie English's penny loafers turn up just a few meters away. This is not a coincidence. Dania, with respect to our second person of interest, what were you able to find out?
He was convicted and sentenced to prison for 3 years. In 1970, a year after Jackie's murder, he abducted, attacked, and confined a female in her car. She did escape by rolling out of the moving vehicle.
Eerily similar in MO to what happened in Jackie's case. And the question is, what happened to him after that?
We were able to confirm that this person is currently living in Scotland. However, we don't know exactly where he is. Searching for him, doing whatever I possibly could, I could not get anything.
Marilyn's relative is a ghost. Monty?
Well, David was not a ghost. I found him. He was fully paroled and released from prison in 1980 after serving 10 years for non-capital murder. He's moved around quite a bit over the last 40 years, but he's out there.
In 6 weeks, given the age of this case, we've made remarkable progress to narrow down our list of suspects. Without ruling out the second person, we need to prioritize David as the prime suspect. The squad can take this case no further, and the police have received a copy of our research and analysis. We identified 5 people of interest in this investigation, and we're now down to 2. One is Marilyn's relative.
Yes.
And the second is a person named David. Let's talk about Marilyn's relative first.
Okay.
You said Jackie would never get in a car with someone she didn't know.
Yes.
They had met at least once or twice.
Yes.
So Jackie would presumably get in the car with him. In 1970, he abducted another woman and held her in a car by her throat until she jumped out of a moving car and escaped with her life. He was then jailed for 3 years and has since moved to Scotland. You can't rule out his earlier behavior, his predictors, as being, good indicators of what he was capable of. So the next thing we did was we conducted what's called a geographic profile. It was deemed highly accurate in terms of pinpointing an offender's probable home base. Our geographic profile of all places in the world points to Ontario. In 1960, David lived in. In 1960, he had already killed. This can't be dismissed as a coincidence.
No.
Statistically, all of these factors in total point to him slightly more than Marilyn's relative. Again, we can't rule out either one.
Is he still in jail?
He's not.
Oh.
But we know where he is. The fact he is alive and out there will put this case very much back into the public interest.
We left no stone unturned. We did everything we possibly could.
I'm just finally happy that we have a suspect. I was apprehensive before coming in, but now I'm excited because it is an opening to an answer. Life is cruel because the older you get, the more you tend to miss someone because you realize you should have a sister or you should have nieces and nephews. She should have been here. She should have been part of our lives. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Michael, very much.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Antonio.
in love make promises, in sickness and in health, to have and to hold. But when the past catches up to you, a couple can find the real meaning of the phrase, love you to death.
When she was found, they were planning a wedding, and that wedding was less than 48 hours away.
Never would have thought that I would have been going to her funeral that next week instead of her wedding. Never would have thought it.
She come in the door and she said, I'm here to get a marriage license. A lot of things happened after that. I don't want to cry.
Hours away from becoming a bride, Molly Watson's story takes a tragic turn when a stranger makes a discovery on a country road.
April 27th of 2018, it was a Friday night.
Glenn McSparron is taking a shortcut from his mother's home there in Monroe County.
Didn't really think nothing of it, just a typical night.
It's remote. It's really grown up. You're driving in between trees and horse weeds down to the creek.
You got to turn as you go down into it and go across it because the road kind of curves.
That night, he says he saw headlights.
He saw a car come up and kind of cut him off, put their headlights right into his view.
And once I got a little bit closer, I could see that there was a car, and I thought that they wanted past me, so I pulled over to the side of the road. Then I could see another car parked over on the right, facing away from me.
He said he saw a short white guy driving the car.
Glenn McSparron described the car with the older white man as an old grandma car.
I couldn't hardly see him because of all the glare. And I just kind of turned my head towards the window and I said, hey, is somebody stuck down there? And how did he say that? He said, I don't know where they're at. It's going to be a while.
Glenn McSparron had a brief verbal exchange with this older white male, and the other individual indicated that Glenn needed to go around a different way.
So I just backed my truck up a little bit and went back to the west. The more I thought about it, I was like, something's not right. I talked to my mom and my brother for a minute, and I told them, I said, I'm gonna go back through there.
On his way back, just 30 minutes later, a horrific scene, a body in his headlights.
I stayed in my truck, and I called 911.
I don't know what the hell's going on here.
They wanted me to just make sure if she was alive or not.
Ma'am. Ma'am. Oh my God. I don't think she's alive, no.
I seen if she was cold to the touch or if she had a pulse, and she did not. And I looked in her eyes and I could tell that she was gone.
Her eyes are open. I swear to God, she's dead.
She was essentially shot execution style. She had been shot once in the back of the head at point-blank range.
The idea that it never happens here, in this country corner of Missouri, is pretty much right.
123.
Police go into full investigative mode, and there's evidence to be found. In the muddy crime scene, they find tire tracks, remarkably well preserved.
And there appeared to be markings that looked like two O's.
I think everybody looking thought that it was probably a Goodyear tire.
I came upon this shirt laying in the road, went around the shirt and past it, and then I stopped and I'm thinking, we're kind of close to the crime scene here. I probably better pick that up just in case.
That t-shirt, we later learned had gunshot residue on it, had Molly Watson's blood.
On a road leading away from the scene, they find an empty box.
It was an empty .22 caliber ammunition box. A .22 would be considered a small caliber firearm, along with several other calibers.
An autopsy later recovers a bullet.
It revealed that it was a small caliber weapon that was used to kill her.
The bullet that they found was too damaged to be able to match it up with any particular firearm.
All we can say about the projectile is that it would be consistent with a small caliber ammunition.
We initially run the vehicle registration, things of that nature. We were eventually able to figure out that the victim was Molly Watson.
Police wake up the family in the middle of the night with some pretty bad news.
My wife woke me up, said, "Your dad's on the phone. He doesn't sound good. Something happened." I'll never forget my dad. He said, "Timmy," he said, "the highway patrol just left our house." I was like, "What happened?" He said, "They found Molly dead in the road." I was like, "What?"
You know how old she is now?
Police want to know what brought Molly to this dark, desolate place, and even more puzzling, who'd have a reason to kill her?
Molly Watson's body was found
wearing her engagement ring
on her left ring finger. They were planning a wedding.
Wedding of her dreams.
That wedding was less than 48 hours away.
We always heard about the wedding. I was very excited about the wedding. You know, the colors, the theme, the decorations.
Molly has a wedding planner who's working on the details.
There's a lot of burgundy and gold. Kind of reminded me of like a Renaissance kind of theme.
2 dresses, she could not make up her mind.
This dress, as you will see with it on me, I show it with me wearing one ball gown crinoline.
Molly Watson is 35. Her friends describe her as sweet, creative, bubbly.
Me and Molly were both kind of goofballs, but she was like my best friend.
Lots of artwork, costuming. She was really good at that.
She has a YouTube channel. She plays with makeup and shows off her sewing.
She wanted to start like a weekly vlog where she would, you know, just talk about herself or what's going on in her life.
I work in education right now. I have 2 degrees in psychology, a bachelor's and a master's.
She wanted to be a singer for a long time, and she had a really good singing voice.
I am going to sing the healing incantation from Tangled. Flower, gleam and glow, let your power shine.
Molly was married in her early 20s. The relationship didn't last more than a few years. During the breakup, she's pregnant and has a son.
Declan was her world. She would take him to the zoo, you know, she would take him about anywhere with her. That was just her world right there.
Later, she dates a woman she'd known since they were in kindergarten together. But that relationship falls apart when Molly meets somebody new at the prison where she works as a corrections officer, a lieutenant named James Addy. He's 16 years older than she is, and Molly's brother says the couple doesn't spend much time with her family.
There was definitely an age gap there. At first, you know, it was weird for us, but, you know, everybody kind of got past it.
I asked her, you know, what does your family think about him? And she was really kind of hesitant. And she said, you know, my family doesn't really like him. They've only met him a few times.
But Addie's brother looked up to him.
Growing up, Jim, he was a role model and example. He was in the Marine Corps. And then from the Marine Corps, he got out after Desert Storm and just created a life.
Molly told her brother that James mentioned he'd been married a few times. One marriage to a woman named Melanie resulted in 2 children, Ben and Emma.
I loved Melanie. She was always nice, always kind, funny. It was just Melanie. The type of women that Jim liked were very, very nice, very kind.
At this point, James and Molly seem to be a couple, and he's quite the romantic. He writes, "You're truly the love of my life, now and forever. You are my everything. I adore you."
After 7 years of having this relationship with James, well, she surprises her family. She suddenly announces, "I'm engaged."
You were booked for her makeup and hair 3 years ago.
Yes.
What did you know about Molly and the wedding and her fiance?
I remember meeting her. She was so excited. She wanted a Disney theme.
A very wonderful wedding had been planned at the Stony Creek Inn. Molly had invited her family here to come to this event.
She was bubbly, she was happy, she enjoyed talking about her wedding. James was kind of the opposite of Molly. He was very quiet, didn't show much enthusiasm. I just thought he was just a groom along for the ride.
And then, according to Molly's brother, in the middle of planning the wedding, James gives Molly some terrible news about Melanie, the mother of his children.
James had told Molly, who told me, that Melanie was involved in December in a really bad car wreck and that she was on life support. And they didn't think she was going to make it.
When I was reaching out to Molly to try to get a meeting scheduled, she had mentioned that James's ex-wife had passed away from a car accident over the holidays. So he had to go do funeral stuff with his kids when we were trying to meet.
There are some last-minute changes. James and Molly cut their guest list in half, and it turns out his daughter, Emma, won't need the hair and makeup team.
The plan was that she had a stepdaughter who she was planning to do hair and makeup on.
I did also want to let you know that it is just going to be me getting hair and makeup done. My soon-to-be stepdaughter has decided she and a friend are going to do each other's hair and makeup, and so we're just going to go that route.
Molly worries that her fiancé may be getting cold feet.
Are you changing your mind?
Not at all.
Then what?
It worries me that you were changing yours.
I wasn't.
Good.
2 days to go till the wedding. The couple are meeting at the county recorder's office to get their marriage license. He remembers Molly well.
The cameras I got in the back of my office for security filmed all that. Molly Watson come in the door just shortly before 4 o'clock, and she said, "I'm here to get a marriage license." And she was quite pleasant to talk to. We had a good time.
You can see James there in his uniform, running late, hurrying inside.
And then Mr. Addy walked in the door, and he was not smiling. He was acting like this was not the place he wanted to be in. She reached right over to him and was touching his arm and stuff, and she would pat him on the back, and she would lean into him a little bit.
He watches as they leave the office, hand in hand.
That's just tough. It really is, because she was a sweet girl. A lot of things happened after that. I don't want to cry.
Just hours later, that marriage certificate is found at the crime scene.
Our marriage certificate was located in her car.
That had her name in there as well as her fiance's name.
Now, in the middle of the night, there's something they've got to do right away. They head to her fiance's house.
So they went to his house that evening.
While the trooper is there in the home, he makes a startling discovery. There's another woman in James Addy's house. She asks the trooper, "What are you doing here?" And I imagine the trooper probably felt much of the same thing. What are you doing here?
It turns out the woman who was there is James Addy's wife, Melanie Addy.
She's his wife? The guy's living a complete double life. What is going on here?
When police show up at James Addy's door to tell him that Molly, his fiancée, is dead, his wife is as surprised to see them as they are to see her.
About 2:30, I think, I saw police car lights out my window. It was very strange to see that. I didn't know what was happening.
She wasn't ready for everything that was about to come. She wasn't prepared that he had this whole other life that was happening without her.
He admits that he was cheating on Melanie with Molly, and that yes, they had been engaged to be married.
Mr. Addy became visibly hot and uncomfortable during that interview. So hot and uncomfortable that he actually walked over to his window, opened it, and put a box fan there to blow the cool air in. James Addy volunteered that the last time he had spoken with Molly Watson was earlier in that evening, and showed the police a screenshot of a 22-minute phone call from her to him.
For police, everything has changed since that very first moment that they walked into the Addy's house. This man has a wife. He was sweating in the interview. He's got phone and text messages that seem ever so suspicious. So for police, there's plenty. What do? They arrest him. They charge him with first-degree murder.
Now the trick is building a case.
You doing all right, sir? Okay. Not really.
Watching your husband loaded into a police car has to be hard for Melanie when you think about the snapshots of her life before. Tell me about meeting James Addy.
I was working at a convenience store, and he was a customer. He came in a lot and finally asked me out.
And once you two hit it off, did he pop the question pretty soon?
Very quickly, maybe 6 months.
That's the wedding photo. Mm-hmm. You look so young, both of you.
We didn't have a lot of money, and we had Ben on the way very quickly.
When Ben came into the picture, man, I remember going up to their house. It was always fun. So happy.
A few years later, Emma comes along. So your family's growing.
It was exactly what we wanted. We had these 2 great kids. I was a stay-at-home mom. He went to work. It was a very traditional way to do things. I thought it was very good.
I love that picture, yeah. All of us together at Christmas time.
As the years go on, their lives seem so normal. James clashes with his teen son, but Melanie says she felt her husband was dedicated to his family and very loyal. She never suspected that he was being unfaithful. Did you get any sense of whether he was contented and happy in the marriage?
He seemed the same all the time.
Melanie did admit that the marriage had its ups and downs, but in her mind, they had always been able to work through whatever the issues were. This was her reality. Everything was the same, but the fact is, it wasn't. James Addy was in a completely different place.
He was over it. He was done. He didn't love her anymore.
James Addy, for the past 7 years, had been living 2 lives.
How was he able to separate both of these lives?
He's a very good liar.
At one point, he takes a trip to Florida on his own. What was that trip about?
He told me it was a trip related to his work, where they were doing some training.
He took the extra step and printed out what looked like a business letter, made it look official that that's what he was doing, but he was taking the trip to Florida with Molly.
As I talk to Melanie, knowing where this is going, it's hard not to be a little incredulous. But no matter what I ask, she's consistent. She did not know the truth about what was going on.
He would get off work at 3, and usually he would get home at 5. And I would say, well, why are you always so late? And that would be an argument. He didn't want to tell me anything.
Any suspicions?
Not about an affair, no.
So let's go back then to April 27, 2018. Any strange behavior on his part?
No, not at all. Nothing. He just seemed like he always did. About 7 o'clock, he came in to the living room where I was and said he was going to a friend's house.
Did it strike you as unusual or odd?
I remember being irritated that I wanted him to just be home, and he had a hard time staying home.
Do you remember when he came home?
I was asleep.
And whatever time James Addy got home, well, Melanie says that she woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of his snoring. And she says she did what she normally does, move to the couch in the living room.
The police tell you
Yes.
that your husband has a dead fiance?
Yes.
And he's engaged to the woman.
Yeah.
And you're learning all of this in one night.
Immediately, yeah.
And you've been married for
23 years.
What did you think?
I can't even tell you. It was just mind-boggling. It made no sense at all. None.
Were you angry? Were you hurt? What were you feeling?
Probably just disbelief in the beginning. It didn't seem right. This was not my life.
Did you think that your husband was capable of murder?
Yes. It just seemed like something he would do to fix a problem. He was a pretty selfish person. He could be controlling and intimidating, and it could be challenging.
Melanie Addy begins searching her house. She searches a loft-type area above the garage, which she rarely went into, and found a photo album.
She finds several photos of Jim and Molly together, smiling, a happy couple.
She found the photos of them in Florida on this trip that she had thought was a harmless business trip for him to go on, that he was actually there with his fiancée, getting ready to get married.
Were you asking yourself, how could I have missed this?
Oh, absolutely, every day. Every day. How do you not see this? I guess because I wasn't supposed to see it.
So he's under arrest, he's in jail.
Yes.
Do you go visit him?
The following week, we were both in tears. Both in tears.
What is he saying to you?
That he's sorry. He's very sorry for the affair, but he insists that he was not the killer, that he is not responsible for this.
Was there a part of you that felt for him on any level?
Absolutely, because I felt like, oh, I have to take care of him. This is what we do. We take care of each other.
Did you look at him suddenly as a stranger, as somebody you didn't know?
I looked at him as someone I didn't want back.
Now investigators have got to untangle this mess. They have to have evidence. They have a t-shirt, the ammunition box, and now there's one other item they find near that dirt road, a cell phone. Molly's cell phone. That phone now means that prosecutors can take the case to the courtroom. There's another voice that will be heard.
Like they say, deceased person doesn't speak, but it's almost like Molly was speaking from the grave.
James Addy, the former prison guard, now underguard himself. At trial, lead investigator Bradley Ream takes the stand to testify about that jaw-dropping moment in the Addy home.
I asked her who she was. She replied, "I am his wife." I was like, whoa. I was wondering what was going on. And he told me that I got myself involved in something I shouldn't have.
Glenn McSparron testifies about finding Molly.
When you first went to the water crossing the first time, was there another car present?
Yes, there was. We came upon a pair of headlights down by the creek, and then I could tell there was another car facing away from me.
Glenn McSparron testifies about seeing that man at the crime scene, but in a blow to the prosecution, he can't identify James Addy as the man he saw.
I couldn't get a really 100% clear look at him.
But McSparron's description of the car that man was driving, that old grandma car, police say matches Addy's car. And then they take a good look at the tires. Prosecutors say one of the tires on Addy's car, a Goodyear, is just the kind that could leave a 00 impression like the one found near Molly Watson's body.
It wasn't just that 00 print from the side of the Goodyear tire. Officers have something more. what prosecutors call a perfect tire print in the mud just a few feet from Molly's body.
A state crime lab expert testifies that he compared the right rear tire on Addie's car to a cast that was made at the scene of the crime next to Molly's body.
And what conclusion did you draw, if any, about the tire and the cast?
My conclusion was that particular tire made that particular impression.
Prosecutors are convinced that this tire track matches Addie's car. The defense is saying, not so fast.
All right, I'd like to talk to you about this comparison that we just had that states
there is no widely accepted scientific principle behind an examiner looking at one tire and looking at a cast and saying they look the same to me.
State's Exhibit 67.
Could you explain to the jury what they're looking at here?
That is an empty ammo box of .22 caliber.
A prosecution witness testifies that bullets found in the .22 caliber rifle found in James Addie's home are consistent with the Thunderbolt ammunition, the kind that came in that empty ammo box they found. Even so, that doesn't prove that it's the murder weapon.
Prosecutors call a long parade of highway patrol investigators and criminalists, and then they introduce a key item of evidence.
A cell phone. Molly's cell phone.
Molly Watson's cell phone was a vital link in the chain of evidence for prosecutors.
Information from her cell phone did tell us that she had driven from her home to this location while she was on the phone with James Addie.
Investigators are poring over all these text messages between James and Molly, and what they're hoping to do is reconstruct the events leading up to her killing. And maybe they'll find even a triggering moment that caused it to happen.
And investigators say there's a reference to that story about Addie's wife Melanie dying after a car crash. Prosecutors say Addie texted Molly that his ex-wife's funeral was happening the day before their wedding.
The funeral is tomorrow.
I'm sorry, sweetness. I love you so, so much.
Why would James Addie lie? Why tell Molly that his ex-wife Melanie was dead? Some speculate that maybe he hoped the story about the car crash would cause his fiancée to postpone the wedding and the collision of his two lives. But instead, it may have sped up his day of reckoning.
Molly, at a certain point, did try to look into this and question this, according to some of the things brought up in court.
Forensic searches of Molly's phones indicated that the day before she was murdered, she was looking for Melanie Addie's obituary.
Was obviously unable to find an obituary for Melanie Addie.
Prosecutors point out that Molly's online search happens the day before her murder and argue this theory. Molly figures out that James's wife isn't dead and confronts him, and they say that's what led him to kill her.
Did James Addie have a plan to see Molly that night?
As stated here in the exhibit, the text message says, "I think I'm going to see you tonight." And that was sent from James's purple phone to Molly.
He knew. He knew what was going to happen. He knew how that day was going to end. Earlier in the evening of April 27th, before James Addie departed his home, he had sent text messages from himself to himself.
Have a meeting tonight at 8, normal place. You have to be there.
James Addie seems to be almost firing himself up to do something drastic.
Don't be a again. Let's go, man.
It was as if one part of him was telling the other to, come on, we can do this. Let's go.
Trying to psych himself up for something. Obviously now we know what it is. Don't be a man. Let's go, man. He's talking himself into it. He's getting himself ready.
Molly was lured to this Monroe County road. A 22-minute phone call and a 22-minute drive to her death.
For the next 30 minutes or so, police say that Addie's phones, both of them, are silent. No calls, no texting.
That is when he killed Molly Watson.
What could have or would have been James Addie's closest allies as a criminal defendant, his wife and his daughter, are now actually going to take the stand against him.
Were you aware that you were on a guest list to attend your dad's wedding? Will you please state your name and spell it for the court reporter?
Emma Addy, E-M-M-A-A-D-D-I-E.
The evidence at trial showed that Emma Addy had actually met Molly Watson previously.
James's daughter Emma needed a costume.
And Dad said that he knew somebody who did that kind of thing. And that person was Molly, and he took me to go meet her, and she made a costume for me.
James had introduced Molly as a friend from work.
Did you know about his relationship with Molly?
No.
She articulated to the jury what she saw and heard and remembered from that night.
I was still up doing homework at around 10 p.m. And that's around the time that Dad came home.
On cross-examination, the defense really tries to create some doubt with timing. Maybe he was in the garage working on his car. Maybe she didn't know.
You'd agree with me that back in this time frame, that your dad would frequently be in the garage, correct?
Yes.
Emma's most damaging testimony may be about that bloody t-shirt. Remember the one that was found in the road near the crime scene?
The t-shirt becomes so important to this case because it's a one-of-a-kind t-shirt. And here's the kicker. It was made by James Addy's daughter, Emma.
Do you recognize that shirt?
Yes.
Right. How do you recognize that shirt?
She was able to identify it because she made it as a part of one of her classes. And so she was able to affirmatively say, that is a t-shirt that I made.
Okay, I know that's my shirt.
She gave it to her father.
I brought them home that day after the contest, and Dad said that he would take one to the garage just to use as rags.
Addie's defense says that's not proof, that maybe Addie had just given the t-shirt to Molly.
Is it so implausible that one fiance has a shirt that belonged to their fiance?
As far as your marriage with James Addy, can you describe it for the jury?
Testifying next, the woman James Addy allegedly said was dead, his now ex-wife Melanie Addy. She filed for divorce soon after his arrest.
It was good sometimes, it was bad sometimes. I thought we both tried to make it work.
You were called to testify.
Mm-hmm.
How hard was that?
It's horrible. It's just horrible. You don't want to be there. I don't want to be in a position where I'm hurting him. I don't want to do that.
So in April of 2018, were you still married to Mr. Addy and living in that same home?
Yes.
Did you have any plans to divorce at that point?
No. He'd always been very hard on me about you know, how a wife should act and how a wife should be. And then he did this. He had an affair, and that's okay. No, we were done. We were done.
James Addy didn't react to his ex-wife taking the stand, but everybody else did. Anybody watching was riveted.
Prosecutors also asked Melanie about that outrageous story, the one they say James told Molly, that Melanie was dead.
Were you in a horrible car crash in October of 2017 around Christmas or New Year's?
No.
And is it fair to say you did not pass away in April of 2018?
That's correct.
After calling nearly 20 witnesses, the state rests its case.
Thank you, sir. You may step down.
And now it's time for the defense to take its turn. All kinds of options here. They could introduce evidence, they could call witnesses, or they could put James Addy himself on the stand. Instead, they do none of the above.
Not putting up a case for the defense is fairly common because the argument is it's the state's burden to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt.
Once my client puts a witness on the stand, now we're in competition for who is more likable, for who do we believe more. You lose the state's burden and you take on a burden yourself.
If the evidence will show that the state does not have proof beyond a reasonable doubt,
Your doubts are reasonable. Your doubts are reasonable because Jim did not kill Molly.
They attempted to raise enough reasonable doubt about the things that weren't there. There was no murder weapon. What would be the motive of a man in love killing his fiancée?
He was in love with Molly, was the defense, and he was having an affair, but that didn't necessarily mean that he was the killer.
Closing arguments in this case ended up being on what would have been James and Molly's 3-year anniversary.
Molly Watson does not get to celebrate her 3-year wedding anniversary today, but you have the power to give her justice.
The jury deliberated about 2.5 hours the fate of James Addy and announced they had reached a unanimous decision.
All right, then. It's my understanding the jury has reached a verdict. Do I have a foreperson? Yes, sir.
When the jury walked in, like 5 of the jury members looked at us. Like they glanced over, and I thought, okay, I don't know if this is a good sign or not.
Verdict reads as follows. As to count 1, we, the jury, find the defendant, James Addy, guilty of murder in the first degree.
The jury found James Addy guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Molly Watson and armed criminal action.
Oh, I was happy. I was so happy to hear that because my sister got justice.
Did you feel that your husband should have been found guilty of murder?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is he a killer?
Apparently.
You asked me earlier what I was surprised at during the trial.
During the entire course of the trial, he failed to represent anything that I brought forward, sir.
Up until this point, James Addy has fully exercised his right to remain silent throughout the trial, but now he's ready to open up and give the court his version of what he says really happened.
There was no way that I could have done this crime.
And he's going to point to someone he says is the true killer.
Thank you, and have a seat.
We're here today on 18 AC-CR 01983, State versus James Addy. Medical is on today for final disposition.
2 months after his conviction, James Addy is formally sentenced.
Mr. Addy, having been convicted by a jury of your peers of the charge of murder in the first degree, I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, that being the sentence mandated by law.
Once sentencing is over, the judge wants to hear from Addy about why he now claims his lawyer did not do a good job.
Anyone expecting regrets or remorse is in for quite a surprise.
Normally, criminal defendants keep their mouths shut, they say yes when they're supposed to, and they move on their way to get their appeal going.
Not James Addy. He is scheduled to spend the rest of his life in prison, but he's got plenty to say, beginning by reading a love letter to the woman he's convicted of killing.
Molly is the love of my life.
Addy insists that Molly was the love of his life. He says he misses her terribly and would have done anything to keep her happy. Addy is now asking for a new trial. He's complaining to the judge that his defense counsel was ineffective.
Honestly, let his defense attorney have it. He said that he did not think that TJ did a great job.
Can you give me an idea of what kind of stuff you wanted him to bring forward?
Cell phone records, Facebook posts that were in discovery that showed motive that somebody else would do.
Molly had an ex who, according to him, had stalked her, very much so had a motive to do harm to Molly as her wedding was approaching.
We reviewed all of the evidence collected during this investigation and presented the relevant admissible evidence at trial, and there was no evidence of any other person with a direct connection to Molly Watson's death.
That evidence pointed to one person, James Addy, who had the motive, means, and opportunity to take Molly Watson's life.
I would like to see him and ask him What were you thinking? Why did you do this to us? Why did you do this to you?
You don't see yourself as a victim.
Not at all. Molly's the victim. She's not here. She lost her life.
You just think of the lyrics of that song that Molly loved so much from the movie Tangled.
Bring back what once was mine, what once was mine.
Just a couple of days ago at work, I'm a mechanic and we have our bay doors open, and out of the blue, this balloon came right up to me and it says, "We love you, we miss you." And that was Molly telling me, "Hey, we're watching you." So it definitely felt good.
Friday nights at 9 on ABC. Mean true crime.
True murder mystery.
Shocking.
Sex, betrayal, lies. A bombshell.
The greatest true crime stories. 2020. Friday nights at 9.